Sports betting bills have been introduced in Minnesota for years. Last session, one came down to the wire, almost reaching the floor for a vote, but close doesn't count, as they say. This year, though, proponents bet the odds are in their favor. I'm now joined by Republican Senator Jeremy Miller, who just announced an updated sports betting bill called the Minnesota Sports Betting Act 3.0. Senator, thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So this is a topic that you have fought for years. What makes it so important to you?
Yeah, we've been working on this issue for many years because it's an issue that I hear a lot about from not only the constituents that I represent in southeastern Minnesota, but folks all across the state of Minnesota. People are very passionate about sports betting. I believe 39 other states plus Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. have already legalized sports betting. The states around us have legalized sports betting. So Minnesota is sort of a little island all by itself that has not legalized sports betting yet, and it's a $150 billion industry. People are doing it, so it's time to get it done. And with the momentum and the bipartisan support that we had last session, I believe that we can build on that, and I am hoping that this is the year that we can finally get it done.
Well, this year you have a new effort out, the Minnesota Sports Betting Act 3.0. So talk me through that. What are the changes?
Yeah, so what we're doing with the Minnesota Sports Betting Act 3.0 is we're really trying to build on the momentum and the support that we had last session. There are, the way I look at it, about three major stakeholders that are involved in gambling that are interested in sports betting. That's the tribes, the tracks, and charities that offer charitable gambling. Now, of course, the Minnesota Lottery also offers the lottery and gambling, but they're not interested in sports betting. So what I really want to do is let's try to put forward a proposal that all of the stakeholders that are involved in gambling that want to get behind sports betting, that they can get behind this proposal. Let's put a proposal out there that Democrats and Republicans can get behind, and let's put a proposal out there that our most important stakeholder can get behind, and that's the people of Minnesota who are interested in this topic. So we built on all of that momentum, and I feel like we have the bipartisan support in the legislature, and I believe that we're very close to getting the support of all the stakeholders, and I'm confident and optimistic that this might be the year we can get it done.
Now, what would you say the odds are of that?
Well, right now I think the odds are 50-50, but what I do know is we're making progress on getting the tribes on board. We're making progress on getting not one horse racing track, but both horse racing tracks on board, and we're also making significant progress with getting the charities on board. And I would say that this is an issue that I've been working on for a long time, and my preference would be to provide licenses for sports betting to all those organizations that want it. So the tribes, the tracks, the charities. The reality is we don't have the votes to get that done in the legislature. So to me, I could have quit and said, okay, we don't have the votes to get that done. We're not going to do this. That probably would have been the easy thing to do. But anyone who knows me, I don't like to take the easy path. And anything worth having, anything worth getting done, or at least most things worth having, don't come easy. I always say there aren't too many trips down easy street. So we went back to the drawing board. So the next best thing is, okay, if everyone can't get a license, then how do we make sure that these stakeholders all benefit from a sports betting bill? So we have a proposal, the 3.0 proposal. The tribes benefit by getting a license. The horse racing tracks benefit by getting a portion of the tax revenue that's generated from sports betting. And now that's tax revenue on the license holders and the platforms. So that tax revenue that's generated, the tracks would get a portion of that to help enhance horse racing in Minnesota. The charities would get a portion of that, those charities that offer charitable gambling, for tax relief. One of the things that I found interesting and incredibly disappointing when I became a senator was charities actually pay more in taxes than they do in charitable giving in their communities. And when you look at these charities that offer charitable gambling, you're talking about volunteer fire departments, you're talking about youth sports, service and veterans organizations. And right now, they're paying more in taxes than they are giving donations in those communities. So with the Minnesota Sports Betting Act, we would provide tax relief for those charities so they can give more money in their communities. So again, the tribes would benefit, the horse racing tracks would benefit, the charities would benefit, and then another important piece for me, and I think folks across the state of Minnesota, is providing some resources to attract major sporting events to Minnesota. The reason why this is so important is because when the Super Bowl comes to town, or the Final Four, or we just had USA Gymnastics trials, World Junior Hockey is coming, WWE SummerSlam is coming. When these major events come to Minnesota, they have a huge economic impact on communities and the state as a whole. So anything we can do to attract these major sporting events to Minnesota only benefits our state.
Senator, what are you hearing from constituents on this?
I am hearing a lot from constituents. I was just home over the weekend. I was at a Winona State basketball game, and I had multiple people come up to me and say, when are we going to pass sports betting? When I'm at the grocery store, I have people come up to me, Jeremy, when are we going to pass sports betting? Literally everywhere I go, people ask about it. It's a hot topic for those folks that are interested, and there are some concerns from opponents of this that we're going to expand gambling. The reality is gambling is already readily available in Minnesota between gambling at the casinos, the lottery, charitable gambling, and the other reality is people are already betting on sports in Minnesota. They're either doing it illegally on platforms that are overseas, or they're going to other states. For example, the state of Iowa, you can go to the state of Iowa, and as soon as you cross the border, or some people tell me get close to the border, you can place a bet on your mobile device, and then you can come back to Minnesota. And I know folks that literally drive to the border, place their bets, and then come home. So sports betting is already happening, and I think it's time to legalize it so those folks that do want to do it legally can do it, and then we can take advantage of the tax revenue that would be generated as well.
Yeah, you mentioned the tax revenue. You mentioned how it might help some charities. What other benefits would Minnesotans enjoy if sports betting were legalized?
So in the Minnesota Sports Betting Act 3.0, that tax revenue would be split a few different ways. Number one, it would help benefit those charities with tax relief so they can give more charitable donations in the communities that they represent across the state. Number two, it would help enhance horse racing in Minnesota. Number three, it would help attract major sporting events to Minnesota so we can take advantage of that economic impact that those major sporting events have. It would also provide some funding for youth sports as well as problem gambling.
Now, Senator, we know this is a bipartisan issue on both sides, bipartisan support, bipartisan opposition. What can you do to reach those people on the other side of the issue?
Again, I think the folks that are opposed, or at least many of them, are concerned about the expansion of gambling and folks that struggle with problem gambling. And I certainly sympathize with that, don't get me wrong. But again, the reality is gambling in Minnesota is already readily available, and sports betting is already taking place. It's either taking place illegally on with offshore accounts, or people are doing it in other states. So my argument is it's happening. It's already readily available. Let's legalize it. Let's benefit from the sales tax revenue that would be generated from it. And then the folks that suffer from problem gambling, this would actually help generate more revenue to provide more resources for more programming and more support for those folks that need it.
All right, thank you, Senator. If your bill were approved, how quickly could it come to Minnesota?
So there are a couple different things we could do. I think to get fully up and running, it could probably take close to a year or so. There have been some other proposals. Actually, Representative Garofalo last year, former Representative Garofalo now, had suggested maybe there's something that we could do if you have a sports betting platform in another state that could easily be turned on in Minnesota. Perhaps we could do that temporarily while our program is getting up and running permanently. So I think there are some things that we could do it more quickly, but probably close to a year to get up and running once we pass the bill, which
All
will
right.
hopefully be this year.
Senator, any final thoughts on this topic?
Nothing more at this point.
All right, well, thank you for your time. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much for having me.